By 8 o'clock, headlights finally swept across the blinds. I heard the front door open. Then Lauren, my daughter-in-law's cheerful voice. "Sorry, Mom. We lost track of time." I didn't say much. I just wanted them to take the kids and go so I could lock up the house and exhale. When the door closed, I sat back down at that same table and looked at the clock. 9:32. My whole evening gone. And it wasn't the first time. It was the fifth. 5 Fridays in a row of waiting, rescheduling, missing my own life. Sitting there in that quiet kitchen, I realized how small my days had become, and I decided something had to change. My name's Yvonne Morris. I'm 67 years old, living by myself in a little brick house in Frisco, Texas. These days I keep busy with my church, a quilting circle on Fridays, and a few good friends who make sure I don't stay home talking to the television. Every Friday, I watch my grandkids, Mason and Lucy. Mason's 8, curious, always asking how things work. Lucy's 5, full of sass and sparkles. I love those kids more than I love sweet tea on a summer day. Alan, my only son, and his wife, Lauren, both work long hours. Friday nights are their date nights. That's what they call it. So every week, I open my door, set out snacks, and get ready for an evening of cartoons, board games, and bedtime stories. It started out as something I looked forward to. I got to see the kids, hear about Mason's school projects, and braid Lucy's hair for bed. I didn't mind that Alan and Lauren stayed out late once in a while. I remember what it's like to be young and tired and trying to keep a marriage running. But lately, once in a while turned into every week. That particular Friday, I looked at the clock more times than I want to admit. They were supposed to pick up the kids at 6. I even texted Alan around 5:45 to remind him I had quilting at 7. He said, "Sure thing, Mom. We'll be there on time." Well, 6 came and went. By 6:30, I started putting away the coloring books. Mason was building Lego towers in the living room. Lucy was watching her little movie for the 3rd time. At 7 o'clock, I heated up leftovers for them because I knew they'd be hungry. I sat down at the kitchen table with my mug of coffee and just stared at my phone, waiting for it to buzz. Nothing. By 7:30, the kids were yawning. I got them brushed and tucked into the pull-out bed in the guest room. I sent another text. "Everything okay? I've got plans tonight." Still no answer. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching those 2 sleeping faces, and my heart tugged hard. I wasn't mad at them. They didn't ask for any of this. But I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, the one that comes when you realize you've been forgotten again. I could have called, but I didn't. I just sat back down at the kitchen table, picked up my mug, and found it cold as stone. I thought about my quilting friends over at the fellowship hall, laughing and sharing dessert. I could almost smell the pecan pie. My slice would have been waiting with my name written on the foil. By 8 o'clock, headlights finally swept across the blinds. I didn't get up right away. I heard the front door open. Then Lauren's cheerful voice. "Sorry, Mom. We lost track of time. You know how Fridays are." I forced a smile and said, "The kids are asleep." I didn't raise my voice. I just pointed toward the guest room. Alan followed, whispering, "Thanks again, Mom. We owe you." I didn't say much after that. I just wanted them to take the kids and go so I could lock up the house and exhale. When the door closed, I sat back down at that same table and looked at the clock. 9:32. My whole evening gone. And it wasn't the first time. It was the 5th. 5 Fridays in a row of waiting, rescheduling, missing my own life. I love my family, but love doesn't mean being at everyone's call every second. Sitting there in that quiet kitchen, I realized how small my days had become. Everything revolved around when someone else showed up or didn't. I rinsed out the cold coffee, turned off the light, and stood for a minute at the window. The street was empty except for a few porch lights glowing. My Toyota RAV4 sat in the driveway, keys on the counter, ready for a night that never happened. Somewhere between the cold coffee and the quiet house, I realized I'd let my own life shrink down to other people's schedules. If you already know exactly how this feels, do me a favor and tap the like button. And make sure you're subscribed, because you'll want to see what happens next. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I've never been good at sleeping late, even when I'm tired. My body's used to the same rhythm. Coffee by 6, quiet kitchen by 7, and the hum of the neighborhood coming alive. That morning, though, I sat at the table and stared out the window longer than usual. It wasn't just last night that bothered me. It was all the Fridays before it. Each one came with a new excuse that sounded a lot like the last. 2 weeks ago, it was traffic on the tollway. Before that, my phone died. Then we lost track of time at dinner. They always said the right words. Sorry. Thanks. Love you, Mom. But after a while, even apologies start to feel like background noise. I poured myself another cup of coffee and thought about how I used to look forward to Fridays. I'd plan little activities for Mason and Lucy, pancake dinners, movie nights with popcorn, sometimes even a trip to the park if the weather wasn't too hot. But lately, those nights felt longer. My knees ache more than they used to, and by bedtime, I'm moving slower. I keep a small pill case on the counter for my blood pressure, but on nights like that, I forget to take it. My whole focus turns to keeping things running smoothly until Alan and Lauren decide to show up. The house still smelled like the kids' bubble bath. Their pajamas were in a neat pile by the laundry room door, folded and ready for the next visit. I smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides something heavy underneath. I love those kids so much, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd turned into an unpaid assistant for everyone else's plans. I decided to step out onto the porch and water my flowers before the Texas heat took over. My neighbor Doris was walking her little terrier Scooter, as she does every morning. She waved her hand and said, "Yvonne, you look like you've got a storm cloud following you." I laughed a little. Oh, it's nothing new. Alan and Lauren were 2 hours late again last night. She shook her head, tugging on Scooter's leash. Girl, they think you're a 24-hour daycare with free snacks. I couldn't help but chuckle. I guess I made it too easy for them. Doris leaned on my fence post. You're a good mama, Yvonne, but good doesn't mean endless. Sometimes you've got to remind people your time's worth something too. I thought about that after she walked off. She's right. I spent my whole life working hard, 40 years at an insurance office, never late once. I raised Alan mostly while Carl worked long hours. I know what responsibility looks like, but I also know when folks stop appreciating something because it's always there. Later that day, I got a call from Alan. He started off sweet, as he always does when he knows he's messed up. Hey, Mom, sorry about last night. We didn't mean to make you miss your quilting. It's all right, I said, even though it wasn't. We'll make it up to you next week, I promise, he said. I could almost hear the promise rolling off his tongue like it had a script. That word, promise, has started to lose its meaning. I've heard it too many times to count. After we hung up, I looked around the living room. The blanket Mason had dragged around was still on the couch. Lucy's little stuffed bunny was sitting by my recliner. I picked it up, brushed off a bit of lint, and set it aside. That house feels so full when they're here and so quiet after they leave. I sat for a while thinking about how easily love can turn into a routine. You start saying yes out of kindness, then out of habit, and before you know it, people stop asking if it's still okay. My mind went back to when I first offered to help them. Lauren had just gone back to work after Lucy was born, and Alan was nervous about balancing everything. I wanted to ease their load, And for a while, it felt good. I was part of their rhythm. But now, I realize I became the rhythm. It's funny how small things start to add up. The gas I use to run errands with the kids, the snacks I keep stocked, the toys I buy on impulse because they ask sweetly. It's never about the money, it's about time. Time I keep giving away without noticing how little of it I've left for myself. That afternoon, I tried to take a nap, but couldn't settle. My thoughts kept circling back to the same place. When did helping turn into being taken for granted? I don't think Alan means to be careless. He's always been kind, just distracted. Lauren, too. They're both running fast, working long hours, chasing that life everyone around here seems to chase. New houses, new cars, better schools. Frisco's full of young families doing the same thing. But sometimes I think people move so fast they forget who's standing still to hold things together for them. Before bed, I wrote a list in my notebook, something I do when I need to clear my head. I wrote down everything I gave up on Fridays, my quilting group, dinner with friends, my little bit of freedom. Seeing it on paper made it real. The next morning, Dorison called and said, "You coming to church brunch?" I said, "Not this week. I need to rest." But what I really needed was to think. That evening, I sat on my porch again, watching the sky turn pink over the rooftops. I thought about Alan's promise to be on time next Friday. I wanted to believe him, but part of me already knew better. Sometimes you don't need a loud argument to know something's off. The silence between the moments tells you enough. As the porch light came on, I said out loud, maybe just to myself, "Love's not a time clock, but even love needs a clock sometimes." The Saturday after that long Friday started like most mornings at my house. I was standing at the stove making scrambled eggs and toast, humming along with the radio. The sun was coming through the blinds, and for a moment, everything felt calm. I had the windows open, and the smell of fresh-cut grass drifted in from a neighbor's yard. I had just poured my second cup of coffee when the phone rang. It was Alan. His voice sounded chipper, like nothing had happened the night before. "Hey, Mom, just checking in. Thanks again for watching the kids. You're a lifesaver." I smiled a little, but didn't say much. While he was talking, I could hear Lauren in the background on speakerphone. She was laughing with someone, probably one of her coworkers. Then I heard her say, clear as day, "We're lucky Mom's free childcare." I froze. Alan didn't notice. He kept talking about how Mason wanted to show me his new Lego project. But my ears were still ringing with those words, free childcare. That one sentence hit me harder than I expected. I don't think Lauren meant it to be cruel, but it felt like someone had taken everything I did out of love and labeled it like a coupon. Free. When the call ended, I just sat there for a while, holding my coffee cup, staring at the kitchen counter. I wasn't angry yet. It was more like a quiet sting that reached somewhere deep. I thought about all the nights I stayed up with those kids when they had colds, all the grocery runs, all the bedtime stories. It was never about money, but hearing it said that way made me feel small. Like I was just a service they didn't have to pay for. Later that morning, I walked over to Doris Ann's house. She lives 2 doors down and makes the best cinnamon rolls in the neighborhood. She saw me coming and waved me in. "Morning, Yvonne," she said, setting out 2 mugs. "You look like you've got something on your mind." "I heard something today I can't shake," I told her, and I repeated what Lauren said. Doris and raised her eyebrows. "Well, isn't that something? You're not free childcare. Honey, you're their mother. Their family." I sighed. "I know, but maybe I made it too easy. I never told them no. Maybe they just assume I'll always be here." She nodded. "That's what happens when folks think love means you'll never draw a line. You've got to remind them your time's worth something too." We sat there for a bit, sipping coffee and talking about how many grandparents around town were in the same boat. Doris said her sister in Houston watches her grandkids almost full-time. I looked it up later that day. Turns out childcare in Texas costs about $10,000 to $12,000 a year per child. I nearly dropped my coffee. No wonder parents lean on grandparents so much. I understood the pressure Alan and Lauren were under. Frisco's not cheap, and raising 2 kids isn't either. But knowing that didn't make me feel any less invisible. I told Doris, it's not the helping that bothers me. It's feeling like they stopped seeing it as help. She smiled, stirring her coffee. Then it's time to make them see again. Not out of anger, but out of respect for you and for them. I nodded, letting that sink in. For years, I've been the dependable one, the person everyone can call at the last minute. I didn't mind. It gave me a purpose after Carl passed. But there's a fine line between being dependable and being used without realizing it. That afternoon, I sat out on my porch and watched kids ride bikes down the street. The air was warm and the sky was bright, but my thoughts felt heavy. I thought about what it meant to take care of yourself when you've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. When Carl was alive, he used to tell me, Yvonne, you can't pour from an empty cup. Back then, I'd laugh it off. I thought love meant giving everything you could, but maybe he was right. Maybe all these late nights and missed Fridays were me pouring from a cup that was already dry. As the day went on, I started feeling something shift. It wasn't anger. It was clarity. I began to see how I'd slowly trained my family to think my time didn't matter. I never corrected them when they were late. I never said no when they asked for just one more favor. Every time I smiled and said, sure, that's fine, I was teaching them that it was fine. I went back inside, took out my small notebook, the same one I'd written in the day before, and turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote, next Friday. Under it, I made a short list. Remind Alan about pickup time. Make plans I won't cancel. Stick to both. I wasn't sure how it would go, but writing it down made me feel stronger. Before bed, I called Doris and said, next Friday, I'm doing something different. She laughed softly. About time, girl. What's the plan? I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to find out what happens when I choose myself first. The next Friday came faster than I expected. I spent the whole week thinking about what I'd overheard Lauren say, and about that list in my notebook. I was nervous, but also ready. I'd made a promise to myself. This time, I was not going to lose another evening to waiting. That morning, I put on my favorite blue blouse and jeans. My church friends and I had tickets to a gospel concert downtown, something I hadn't done in years. The concert started at 7:30, which meant I needed to leave by 6:15 at the latest. I texted Alan early. Just a reminder, pick up by 6 sharp tonight. I've got plans. He replied within minutes. Got it, Mom. We'll be on time this time. Promise. I smiled a little when I saw that word again. Promise. I wanted to believe it, but part of me already knew how this might go. Still, I cooked dinner for Mason and Lucy, set out their favorite macaroni, and helped Mason finish his homework. By 5:30, everything was calm. The kids were laughing at a cartoon, and I had my purse packed by the door. I could feel the excitement bubbling up. It had been a long time since I looked forward to going anywhere that wasn't the grocery store or church. 6 o'clock came. I looked out the window. No car. At 6:15, I texted again. Hey, concert starts soon. Everything okay? Nothing. By 6:30, I was pacing the living room, checking my phone every few minutes. Mason asked, Grandma, are we waiting for Mom and Dad? Yes, sweetheart, I said, forcing a smile. They'll be here soon. 7 o'clock came. Still no sign. My stomach tightened. I could feel my chance at a nice evening slipping away again. I tried calling Alan, no answer. Then I tried Lauren, straight to voicemail. By 7:30, the kids were yawning on the couch, and my phone screen was still blank. The same sinking feeling I'd had the week before came back, but this time something inside me shifted. I looked at the clock, then at the tickets sitting on the counter, and I thought, not tonight. I took a deep breath, walked to the hallway closet, grabbed my purse, and found Brenda's number, the college girl who sometimes babysits for families nearby. Responsible, kind, and just one street over. When she answered, I said, "Hi, Brenda, it's Mrs. Morris from Oakwood Lane. I know it's last minute, but would you be available for a few hours tonight?" She said, "Sure thing, Mrs. Morris. I'm home studying anyway." I thanked her, then turned to the kids. "Okay, Mason, Lucy, we're going for a quick car ride, all right?" Lucy rubbed her eyes. "Are we going home?" "Not yet, sweetheart," I said, helping her with her shoes. "Grandma just needs a little help tonight." I grabbed my keys and locked up the house. The air outside was warm and smelled like rain. I buckled the kids into my Toyota RAV4, and as I started the engine, Mason looked at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes half closed. "Grandma," he mumbled, "why aren't we at your house? Are you mad?" My chest tightened. "No, honey," I said softly. "Grandma's just keeping a promise to herself tonight." He nodded sleepily and leaned against the seat. Brenda's house was only a minute away. I parked in her driveway, and she met us at the door with a friendly smile. I explained everything clearly, handed her $75 in cash for 3 hours, and gave her Alan and Lauren's numbers. Brenda promised to keep them safe and told me not to worry. Before I left, I knelt beside Mason and Lucy. "You'll have fun with Miss Brenda. I'll see you soon, okay?" Lucy hugged me around the neck. I kissed her forehead and walked to my car before I could change my mind. It was 8:10 when I pulled out of the driveway. My hands were shaking a little, but it wasn't from fear. It was from finally doing something different. I drove to the concert, parked near the front, and looked at my phone one last time. Still nothing from Alan or Lauren. At 8:15, I typed a short, calm message. "Hi both. Since I hadn't heard from you by 8 p.m. and I couldn't miss my engagement, I've dropped Mason and Lucy off with Brenda. They're safe and sound. I've paid her until 11 p.m. Here's her number and address. Please pick them up from her house when your evening is over. Have a good night." I read it twice before hitting send. No anger, no sarcasm, just the truth. As I turned off my phone, a wave of peace settled over me. I wasn't sure how they'd react, but that didn't matter. For the first time in a long time, I was putting my plans before everyone else's. Inside the concert hall, my friends were already seated. The music started just as I found my spot. The choir sang with such joy it filled the whole room, and I felt something lift off my shoulders. I thought about the kids, safe and cared for, and about the text message waiting on Alan's phone. Maybe he'd be angry, maybe confused, but he'd finally understand that my time had value too. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. For the first time in months, I wasn't looking at a clock or checking my phone. I was just there, in the moment, exactly where I chose to be. I walked into that concert on time. For once. The music was loud, but the peace was louder. And this is where I have to pause and ask for your honest opinion. What would you have done in my shoes? Did I do the right thing by calling a sitter, or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments below. I truly want to know what you think. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months. I made coffee, buttered some toast, and sat on the porch watching the sun come up. For once, I didn't feel rushed or guilty. The gospel concert had been wonderful. My friends hugged me and said how good it was to see me out again. I slept soundly when I got home, no tossing or waiting for the sound of a car pulling up late. But peace doesn't last long when people don't like being told no. My phone buzzed just after 8. Alan's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated before answering. "Morning, honey," I said, trying to sound normal. "Morning." His voice was sharp. "Mom, what were you thinking last night? You dropped the kids off with some girl we don't even know." I took a deep breath. "Brenda isn't some girl. She's the neighbor's daughter. She's responsible and has babysat for several families on this street. The kids were safe and happy." He didn't let me finish. "You should have called us. We were worried sick when we got to your house, and you weren't there." I frowned. "Worried sick? Alan, I texted you at 6, again at 6:15, and at 7. No answer." I finally sent a message at 8:15 with all the details. "You didn't respond until after 11. How was I supposed to know if you were okay? Or if you even remembered the kids?" There was a pause on his end. Then he said quietly, "We had dinner plans." My phone was in my jacket pocket. "I didn't see your messages." "That's exactly my point," I said. "You didn't see them because you weren't paying attention. I've waited around too many times, Alan. Last night, I kept my word to myself. The kids were never in danger." He sighed but still sounded upset. "You embarrassed us, Mom. Lauren's friends were there when we got the text. It made us look irresponsible." I could almost laugh at that. "Alan, I didn't send the message to make you look any way. I sent it because I was tired of being the only one who keeps promises." He said nothing for a moment, then muttered, "We'll talk later," and hung up. Not 5 minutes passed before my phone dinged again. 3 long text messages from Lauren. I sat down and read every word. "Hi, Yvonne. I know you meant well, but that wasn't okay. We trusted you with the kids, and you just left them somewhere without checking with us. We have to talk about boundaries and communication. This isn't just about time. It's about trust." I read it twice, then set the phone down. Trust. That word stung. I'd been the one people trusted for years, for their kids, their keys, their emergencies. Now, suddenly I was untrustworthy because I finally chose to have a life. I poured myself another cup of coffee and thought about what to say. I typed and erased a few messages before settling on the truth. "Lauren, I understand why you're upset, but the kids were never alone or unsafe. You both didn't answer my calls or texts for 2 hours. I had a prior engagement and couldn't cancel it again. I made sure Mason and Lucy were cared for and left you every detail. I'm not angry, just setting boundaries. I love you all, but my time matters too." I hit send and left it at that. Not long after, my phone started ringing with calls from friends who'd heard about what happened. Word spreads fast when people talk. Doris, and was the first one to check in. She laughed when I told her about Alan's reaction. "Oh, honey, half the folks at church are saying you're brave, and the other half say you went too far. You're the talk of the neighborhood this morning." I chuckled. Well, I guess I finally did something interesting. "Don't you worry about what they think," she said. "You did what you needed to do. They'll learn." Later that afternoon, I went out for groceries and ran into my friend Martha at the store. She patted my arm and said, "I heard about your Friday night, Yvonne. Good for you. Sometimes our kids forget we're people too." But another friend, Joyce, wasn't so sure. "I don't know," she said softly. "I don't think I could have left my grandkids, even with someone I knew. It's a risk." I smiled politely. "I understand, Joyce. It wasn't an easy choice." Driving home, I thought about both sides. They were right in their own way. Maybe some folks would never agree with what I did, but I knew my reasons were honest. I didn't leave out of anger. I left because I couldn't keep living around other people's plans. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where I'd waited so many Friday nights, and took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel small. As women, especially at my age, we walk a thin line. If we say yes too much, people call us pushovers. If we finally say no, we're selfish or cold. Either way, someone has an opinion about it. I thought about my mother and how she used to say, "Sometimes you have to teach people how to treat you." I guess I was just doing that a little late in life. I tidied up the kitchen, watered my plants, and turned on the TV, feeling something I hadn't felt in a while, peace that didn't depend on anyone else's apology. Whatever Alan and Lauren thought, I knew this much for sure. I wasn't looking for permission anymore. Just understanding. A few days passed after that tense weekend. Things were quiet. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I didn't reach out either. Sometimes silence does the work that words can't. By Wednesday morning, I decided it was time to talk face to face. I didn't want to keep carrying hurt around like laundry that never gets folded. So I sent a message. "Alan, can you and Lauren stop by Saturday morning? I'll make coffee. I think we should talk." He replied right away, "We'll be there." When Saturday came, I got up early, made a pot of coffee, and set out a plate of cinnamon rolls from the bakery. The house was calm and smelled like home again. I wanted the conversation to start from a place of peace, not argument. At 10 sharp, I saw their car pull up. Alan came in first, carrying a nervous smile. Lauren followed, looking like she'd been rehearsing what to say. "Morning," I said, pouring coffee into mugs. "Let's sit." We gathered around the kitchen table, the same table that had seen every family dinner, every birthday, and too many nights of waiting. This time, though, I was steering the talk. "I know the last week's been uncomfortable. I began, but it needed to happen. I love Mason and Lucy with everything in me, but I can't keep giving up my time without any thought in return. It's wearing me down, and that's not good for any of us." Alan nodded slowly. Lauren stared at her mug. "I'm not angry," I continued, "but we need some ground rules if I'm going to keep helping. I'll babysit once, maybe twice a month, as long as we agree on pickup times, and those times are kept. If there's an emergency, I'll help, of course. But last-minute changes and long waits can't keep happening." They stayed quiet for a moment. The air was thick, but not tense, just honest. Then Lauren spoke, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "Yvonne, I'm so sorry. I think with work and the kids, we just fell into a routine and stopped seeing you. We just saw help." Her words caught me off guard. Not defensive, not polished, just plain truth. She looked up, and her eyes were shiny with tears. "You've done so much for us, and we've been selfish. It's like we forgot you have a life, too." I reached across the table and put my hand over hers. "I know it wasn't on purpose, Lauren. Parenting's hard. I remember those days. You're both working hard and trying to give those kids everything. But part of what they need is to see respect in action, how adults treat one another." Alan cleared his throat. "Mom, you're right. I didn't realize how much we'd started relying on you. We should have handled things differently." He looked at Lauren, then back at me. "We'll start paying for a sitter on our nights out. You shouldn't feel stuck." "That's not necessary," I said, "but thank you for offering. I just want boundaries that everyone respects. I want to help, but not at the cost of my own time." Lauren nodded. "You deserve that." We sat there for a while, sipping coffee in the kind of silence that isn't uncomfortable. Mason and Lucy's laughter drifted in from the car, where they were watching a cartoon on the tablet. I smiled, thinking of how little they knew about all the grown-up learning that had to happen for their sake. After a few minutes, Alan asked, "So, does this mean we're okay?" I smiled. "We're fine. Just learning new habits. Forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means starting fresh on fair ground. They both smiled, and I could see the relief in their faces. Before they left, Lauren hugged me tightly. "Thank you for being patient with us," she said. "We'll do better." "Just keep your promises," I said with a grin. "That's all I need." After they drove off, I stood by the window watching their car disappear down the street. The morning light hit my coffee cup, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a while: balance. It wasn't about winning an argument or proving a point. It was about teaching love how to stand upright again. As I cleaned up the table, I thought about how many women my age struggle to find that same middle ground, where love doesn't mean losing yourself. That morning taught me something important. You can draw lines and still be loving. You can speak up without shouting. And sometimes boundaries are the most honest form of kindness. The house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that feels lonely. This time, it felt earned. The weeks after that talk felt lighter, like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. For the first time in a long while, I didn't dread Fridays. They weren't a reminder of waiting anymore. They became my nights again. That first Friday after our talk, I didn't have the grandkids. Instead, I met up with some ladies from church for dinner at a small cafe downtown. We laughed over chicken salad and sweet tea, and when someone asked if I wanted dessert, I said yes without checking the time. I stayed out until 9, drove home with the radio playing softly, and realized how good it felt to live on my own schedule again. Over the next month, I started saying yes to things I used to skip. I joined a walking club that meets twice a week at the park. It's mostly women around my age, all of us trying to stay active and connected. We talk about everything: recipes, grandkids, blood pressure pills, and sometimes life's little regrets. One morning, one of the ladies said, "Yvonne, you seem happier lately." And she was right. I even started selling a few of my handmade quilts online. My friend Doris, and helped me set up an Etsy shop. We called it Stitch by Stitch Texas. I never thought I'd be running an online store at 67, but it's been fun. Every order that comes through reminds me that there's still plenty left for me to do and enjoy. Alan and Lauren kept their word. They stuck to the schedule and started using a sitter for most of their nights out. When they did ask me to help, they arrived right on time, sometimes even early. They also made sure to bring dinner for me and small gifts: flowers, candles, once even a gift card to my favorite store. It wasn't about the presents, though. It was the effort. It showed they finally saw me as more than free childcare. Our weekends became family time instead of obligations. Mason and Lucy started coming over on Saturdays instead of Fridays. We'd spend the morning planting flowers in the yard. Mason likes digging the holes, and Lucy's in charge of picking colors. She always picks pink, no matter what season it is. Afterward, we'd sit on the porch eating popsicles, talking about school, and laughing about silly things. Those moments felt purer now. No rush, no resentment, just love. Lauren and I got closer, too. One Sunday after church, she stayed behind while Alan took the kids to the park. We sat on the porch drinking lemonade. She said, "Yvonne, I don't think I ever told you how much we appreciate you. I was embarrassed after how we acted. You were right to speak up." I smiled. That's how families grow, Lauren. Sometimes we have to bump into each other a little before we figure out where the lines are. She laughed. "Well, I think we're finally learning." We both knew it wasn't about blame. It was about respect and love that grows better with honesty. Life started to look different, but in the best way. I was busier, but I wasn't exhausted. I had balance. I looked forward to my own plans, and I didn't feel guilty for it. Sometimes when I'm at the park with my walking group or sewing with the ladies at church, I think back to that Friday night, the one when I finally put my foot down and chose myself. I still remember driving my Toyota RAV4 to that gospel concert. My heart racing, but my mind clear. That night changed everything. Not because I made a big scene, but because I made a small, brave choice. Now, every time I look at my calendar, I smile. It's filled with things I actually want to do. Bible study, lunch dates, craft fairs, family picnics. The kind of things that make you remember who you are outside of being someone's mother or grandmother. To the women listening to this story, I'll tell you something I had to learn the hard way. Boundaries don't break love. They protect it. When we stop giving out of guilt and start giving out of choice, love grows cleaner and stronger. Mason and Lucy still ask to sleep over sometimes, and I always say yes when I can. They've learned to check the clock now. Mason even jokes, "Grandma, don't worry. Mom said they'll be on time." It makes me smile every single time. A few evenings ago, as the sun set, I sat on my porch with a cup of tea. The street was quiet except for the sound of sprinklers and kids playing a few houses down. I looked at the flowers blooming in the yard, the ones Mason and Lucy planted, and I felt proud, not just of them, but of myself. That little act of courage changed how my family treated me. It changed how I saw myself, too. I realized it's never too late to draw a line and take your life back one Friday at a time. And now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever drawn a line and wondered if you went too far or not far enough? I still think about that Friday. What would you have done if you were me? If this story reminded you of something in your own life, I'd love to hear it. Share your thoughts in the comments below, because your story might be the one that helps someone else speak up. Don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. You never know whose heart it might reach next. Lastly, don't forget to download this wonderful book called 38 Uplifting and Funny Short Stories for Seniors. Easy-to-read tales that bring laughter, memories, and mental stimulation. It's full of heartwarming, simple stories written to bring a smile, stir up memories, and remind us that joy doesn't fade with age. It grows stronger. You'll find it in the pinned comment below.